everybody. Hi, 505. How you doing? Thank you so much, 505, for the likes. Welcoming everybody. How was your day? CHR, how are you? Thank you so much. I've been seeing your activity on my page. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hi Diva, how you doing? Hi, Shalom. Y'all must. Must every. Okay, yeah, all meat. are you doing? All right. You know, one of the things that people love to do in life is taking on a role that is unplayable. And there is one role that is unplayable in life. Just one role. You can play the president in a movie. You can play the king. You can play the queen. But one role you can't play is play God. But guess what? That's the role a lot of people want to play. Playing God. Joseph in a warning dream, an angel came at night. Take Mary and the little child from Herod's cruel hand. Where can we go to find ourselves away? I try to sing, but the voice is not. Wow. So like I was saying, some people would love to play that role of God. And that is the only unplayable role. How do you play it? You've done it severally. Sometimes you think without you, some person can never do well in life. And you say, let me see how he can do it. How have you done it in your life? Sometimes taking the support from somebody, and you think that once you've taken that support, the person will die. But one thing that we know, you can't play God. You know how many people have tried to play God in this world? Hitler tried playing God. Where is he today? Bosses sometimes try to play God. Yeah, you can fire and hire anybody you want. But when you begin to think, thank you so much for the follow, I appreciate it. When you think without you, nothing can work in their lives, then you know that you're setting yourself for the biggest upset in life. Thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate it. God bless you. You know, sometimes God blesses us, and the blessing that He blessed us with, we forget where He picked us from. And that's very common with human beings. We get so comfortable in that position that God has put you, and you begin to think you own that position. Have you ever seen wives that got married? Somebody took them from the doldrums of poverty and brought them into wealth. Suddenly they start looking down on every other person. Human beings, we just learn to forget. We forget. And that's why God always insists that you should put monuments so that you can remember where He took you from. And we forget most times that God took us from somewhere. Some of you were homeless at some point. Now you've got cars and you suddenly forgot where you came from. And now you want to play God in somebody else's life. When was the last time you did something for somebody that you know cannot help you back? Somebody that can't do anything for you. When was the last time you did something for that person? When was the last time? It doesn't always have to be money, because when we say things like this, people are only thinking in terms of money. No, it's not always money. Now, I worked with a boss one time in Nigeria. Now, if you're working with government and there is an opening in government, you know what they do? Maybe they need 100 people. And they're going to put it in the public that government needs 100 people to employ. But guess what? The directors already have those that they want. Hi, strange, how you doing? Stranger. I'm still talking to you. I didn't know I would still talk to you. Anyway, it's good to see you again. Now, there's this guy that was given a slot, and they said, bring 5 people. Guess what he did? You know what some people do? Hi, how you doing? What some people do is they sell those slots to people and say, come, you want to work in government? Get so amount of money, give me and I'll give you the slot. Because they probably have 5 slots, so they sell them. This guy neither sold. He didn't sell his slot. He didn't give his slot to anybody. Guess what? He wanted to be the only victory where there's so much grasses. And at the end of the day, how have you blessed somebody else? One of the things I love about the Jewish community, they pull each other up, and that's why it's difficult to defeat Israel. You can't, because they understand the power in togetherness. Africa, people are ready to sell their own people for their personal comfort. And that's why Africa is the way it is to date till tomorrow. In the days of our forefathers, they sold slaves for what? For bottles of gin, for bowler hats, walking stick, for mirrors. Now, in your modern thinking, you'll be like, why would they do that? Because these things are commonplace these days, right? Do you know they're still doing it till today? They've exchanged all that for money. leaders are still doing it till tomorrow. That's why till tomorrow we have people of questionable characters leading the African continent. And guess why they are there? Because some foreign power thinks that they need them there to be able to collect the resources of the African continent. The African continent is the richest continent in the world when in terms of natural resources. But how come it's the poorest continent in the world? Duty calls. I'll be back in a moment. All right, I'm back. the African continents have stayed down. How come? Do you know that the Africans own oil? They have gold. They have lithium and a whole lot of other minerals. But guess who controls them? Not the Africans. They're given a few dollars and given a few mansions out of this country, and they are made to feel like they belong to the elites, and they don't mind selling their people. Why is Nelson Mandela respected, the most respected African to ever live? Why is that? The guy was in jail for 27 years and he was offered freedom because he was fighting for the end of apartheid. Now, if you're young, you won't understand what apartheid is, but let me tell you what it is. It's a situation where the racism is race-based, like we have all over the world today, but it was institutionalized. In America, you have the civil rights laws. You you can't really discriminate anybody openly. Yes, there are racists, but you can be blatant. But in South Africa, it was encoded in the laws. That's why they were called apartheid laws. If you were a black man, there were things you couldn't attain. If you were a white man, you had privileges that you didn't even deserve, but you got them by law. Thank you for the gift. I appreciate you. And that was it. Things you couldn't attain as a black man and privileges you got as a white person, deserve it or not, he was in the law. And Mandela was offered several deals. You know what? Your family will be taken care of. You'll be this, you'll be that, and you'll be that. And the man said, no. Anything, any freedom that will involve, that will not include the expunging of that regime, that law, apartheid regime, is not for me. They were like, don't worry, leave him there, his spirit is gonna break. 10 years, his spirit did not break. 15 years, he was even more resolved. Now there was pressure all over the world, from America, where you have a lot of racism yet, but there are civil rights movements. In Britain, all over the world. Now the government couldn't handle the thing, offered him another deal, but he said no. If you're going to keep that system, count me out. He was resolved. He would not sell his people. That's why when he eventually gained his freedom on his terms, not on the terms of his oppressors and those who wanted to keep the fake system, and guess what? He became the president, the first black president of South Africa. Guess what? Do you know he could have died because others before him were killed? There was a guy called Stephen Biko and so many other unnamed people. Thank you for the rose. Thank you so much for the rose. Appreciate it. God bless you. He didn't sell his people out. And guess what? Today we respect him all over the world. Somebody drew my attention one time and he said, You are an African? I said, yes. He said, what did Nelson Mandela do for you in Nigeria? I'm like, well, come to think of it, he didn't really do anything for me in Nigeria. So why do you respect him? Because of what he did for his people. Didn't sell his people out like most Africans were doing. So the good you do today, you might not see the reward today, but it will come back. Trust me, it will. Especially when you do things for people that can't pay you back. That's when God pays you. So question is, would you rather men pay you, or would you that God pays you? Which one would you want? Who would you rather pay you? Would you rather men pay you? Or would you rather God pays you? You know, Jesus was talking and he said, don't be like the scribes and the Pharisees. There is a church, I know. They do charity work. And when they do their charity work, they have to call all the media. Come witness our giving. They call everybody, come witness our giving. And everybody calls them. They say, yeah, that church gives to charity. And you know what did Jesus say? You got your reward already. You wanted publicity. He said, don't be like the scribes and the Pharisees. When they give, they sound the trumpet. That's what happens when you get the media to come with you to see what you're doing. When Jesus said, don't let the left hand know what your right hand is doing. Today and forever, God is always the same. There's no reason to doubt God can do it again. Yesterday and forever, God is always the same. There's no reason to doubt God can do it again. you rather pays you? Would you rather the payment of God or the payment of man? You know, I always like making reference to Joseph. Guess what? Because he was so good at his job, Potiphar's wife wanted to pay him. Imagine if he had taken that payment. Imagine if he had taken that payment. What would have become of Joseph? Sometimes when you go into a pit, is transportation to your destiny. Just think of it. You know, the thing is that because we don't see the whole picture, and that's one thing that God did to make sure that He is God and you're not. You can only see a part. God sees every angle. You know, have you seen a movie once and you see in the movie, you know, one of those movies where you have this horror film and you're like, this person is walking into danger and the person doesn't know that it's getting into danger. You watching the movie can see it, but the person in the movie can't see it, supposedly. Now imagine you are a witness and you see that somebody is going to be promoted to become a king in a week's time, and guess what? He starts trapping the boss's wife, the boss who is a servant to the king. And then he gets rewarded for that. Not knowing that God's payment is coming. Thank you for the rose. Uche, I appreciate it. God bless you. Uchechi. Is it Martello? Thank you for the gifts. I appreciate it all. So, when you have been rewarded by man, you know you got no reward left from God, because what is He going to give you? And that is one of the biggest strategies of the devil. Every time he knows that you're close to your breakthrough, he tightens the noose against you. And then what happens? He gives you some kind of a reward, tempts you with it. Hello, how you doing? Oh, Ivy. How have you been? Good evening. It's weekend. so much. Thanks for asking. So sometimes, every time that, oh, thank you so much. My joy. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Every time you're close to your breakthrough, the devil will always distract you. And I don't know why I have to always say this, because I know there are people that have lost their breakthrough because of bread. Guess what? You're hungry and there is bread. Take the bread. And meanwhile, your breakthrough is right there. You know, I remember there's this cartoon that I saw. You know, a cartoon. Now this guy is in prison and he was hungry, very hungry. Guess what? There was a piece of bread somewhere. There was a stick. And then the key to the cell he was in. And guess what he did? He went for the key went for the bread instead of the key. Like Jack Ma would say, if you put $1 billion and put banana before a monkey, he will go for the $1 billion, right? No, he will go for the banana. And that's why a lot of people have lost their breakthroughs. Thank you so much. Go golly, go golly. Do you know why many of us have not attained our goals? Because we are stopped from achieving our goals because of a clear path to a lesser goal. Did you get that? I'll say it again. We are stopped from achieving our goals by a clear path to a lesser goal. Now, sometimes the goal is too big and you feel that it's too difficult. But that's your goal. That's what you've always wanted. But guess what? You see a clear path to a very lesser goal and you go for that instead and you forget about the goal. Guess what? You're probably closest to the goal. That's when you see people begin to cut corners. When you cut corners, it pays for a while. Trust me, it pays. Not that it doesn't pay, but it pays for just a while. Now, I am one man that you say is the king of corner cutting. I've cut corners a lot. And I can tell you firsthand, it pays for a while. It doesn't pay for all time. In life, you have those people that are time-bound players and those who are infinity players. An infinity player, there's nothing you can do about them. That's why you have some of these big corporations in the world. They are infinity players. I always learn from Apple. When everybody was rushing on in the tech world, they didn't. They just bided their time. They knew what they wanted. They didn't want to do what every other person was doing. They didn't follow any trend. And guess what they did? They blazed a trail. Today, it's Apple versus all the others. Apple versus all the others. Where is Nokia? How many of you know Nokia? Where are they today? Because they took the easy way out. Thank you, Ivy. Thanks for the gift. To me that the universe and God work in tandem. I was listening to Elon Musk and he said we failed trying to launch our rockets. We failed severally, and if we had failed the last one that succeeded, that would have been it for us, because we put in everything. Eventually it worked. So don't discount it as that thing that you're doing, because it's hard for now. Trust me, there's gonna be light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, it may not look like it sometimes. I saw a cartoon. I always learn from some of these cartoons. You know, these guys were digging for diamonds. Now there were two of them digging on the opposite sides. Then one struck diamond, like 3 diamonds, and the other one turned and killed this other guy and took his 2 diamonds. Guess what? Where he was digging had thousands of diamonds. So sometimes when it's hardest, your closest when it seems hardest. And that's why the songwriter says, God will make a way where there seems to be no way. Even though I don't agree with that, because the Bible says God will make a way where there is no way. Because when you say there seems to be no way, that's there is a way and you just don't know. So if there seems to be no way, then that means there's a way you just don't know. Why will God make a way when there's a way that you don't know? No, he said, I will make a way where there is no way. And that's the God that we serve. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. My time is gone. I will see you in almost 3 hours time. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all my gifters. For the first time, I have 5 gifters. Wow. In one live. In one live. Wow. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, guys. You guys have been wonderful. God bless you. I appreciate it. I see you by 11 o'clock in 3 hours time.